Our cat is asleep directly under the tripod right now. It's really cute. I got a riddle for you guys. If you're watching a movie that's really well made, but the main character that you're stuck with for 2/3 of the movie is an absolute piece of shit, is the movie even worth watching?
Certain places have personalities, and sometimes they're rotten.
Hey, how's the little kicker doing?
Say hi to Daddy.
Girl on the Third Floor is the directorial debut of Travis Stevens. It stars former wrestler CM Punk as Don, an ex-lawyer who moves into a suburban home in hopes of fixing it up for his wife and upcoming baby, only to discover that the house has something of a life of its own. This could have gone a few different ways. I love suburban gothic horror, but a directorial debut starring an ex-wrestler could be not great. But I was hearing really good things about it, so I decided to check it out. And having watched it, Girl on the Third Floor is something of a mixed bag. For a directorial debut, it's really impressive how well made this film is on a technical level. The cinematography is stellar, the gore effects are really well done. I also want to really praise the set design and art department, because they really do a good job at making this house feel like it has a life of its own. It captures a really lovely suburban gothic feel, and it kind of ends up feeling like a heavy metal version of I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House. Similar aesthetic, but way less dull. On top of that, this movie is gooey, and if you are not a fan of bodily fluids of all consistencies and colors, you might not have a good time with this movie. There's a whole lot of cum and bile and black mold, and it's just leaking from everywhere and going into orifices, and it's an interesting time. CM Punk's performance as Don isn't something I would call bad necessarily. He gives a serviceable performance that I wouldn't necessarily call good, but I definitely wouldn't call bad either. The problem is that the character of Don is so fucking unlikable that it's kind of a miserable experience being stuck with him for 2/3 of the movie. He's so much of a douchebag and he's impossible to root for. And it's really hard to give a shit about any bad thing that happens to him. The performance isn't bad. The character definitely is. The soundtrack is a good example. This movie features a lot of blaring heavy metal music that just doesn't fit together with the gothic, quiet aesthetic of the rest of the film. And then certain elements come into play and just don't quite mesh together with the rest of the film that's being presented. The soundtrack is a good example. The movie features a lot of blaring heavy metal music that comes into play whenever Don is fixing up the house or listening to his iPod. And it's not bad on its own, but it does not fit with the aesthetic of the film at all. It causes a lot of juxtaposition that makes it feel like two tonally different films clashing with each other. Is it a dark morality tale, a sort of horror take on the money pit where Don's guilty conscience is manifested by the house that he can't quite complete because there's always something eating at him? Well, kinda for the first 2/3 of the movie, but then the batshit insane third act happens, and while it definitely is insane from a visual perspective, it doesn't add up or connect with anything that came before it. It doesn't make much sense from a plot perspective, it doesn't make much sense from a tonal perspective. We go from this methodical, psychological slow burn where everything is really just tense and atmospheric and keeping you on the edge of your seat, and then it turns into this Evil Dead-inspired, over-the-top, gory splatter film. And those final 30 minutes feel totally divorced of everything that came before them. The titular Girl on the Third Floor has a cool design, really Silent Hill-inspired, but when it comes to her backstory, the design makes no sense, and neither her design or her character or really anything about her have anything to do with the plot or the house at all. I was definitely hoping for more from this movie. It had a whole bunch of promise in its first 2 acts. They were flawed, but they were at least consistent. And then the third act comes along and just totally bulldozes through all of that and becomes a tonally entirely different movie. And as a result, I'm going to say that Girl on the Third Floor is meh. It's a shame because I really would have wanted to enjoy this movie, and I would have if it had committed to one style throughout its entire runtime. As it stands though, it doesn't. And while it definitely shows promise for Stevens' future in directing, it's not a film that I ever plan on revisiting. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you like this channel and you want to see more, click down there, like, comment, subscribe. I've got a Patreon link down in the description. I'm talking fast because my battery's dying. Be like all these cool people. Donate $1. I would appreciate it. $1 would help. Anything would help. Even if you don't. Thank you so much for watching anyway, though, and I'll see you all very soon.
You want my advice? Get your husband and your baby far away from that house.